everyone, and welcome to the Ho Ho-liday Show. This is the last episode, and we're talking about content strategy today. I'm Rebecca Berbel. I'm the product marketing manager at Oncrawl. I have a background in both content and some technical SEO, so I'm really, really pleased to be here with Chima Mmeje, who is a content writer and strategist. And Chima, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got here?
Yeah, I do content and strategy for SaaS and tech companies. I've been doing this for about 2 years, and then content writing more broadly before that. But mostly what I do is SEO content writing and building the strategy around that, but with a focus on clustering, using the clustering model. And I work with companies like SEMrush, Aura, Wix, and those kind of big companies. Yeah.
That's a really impressive sort of background there. You're also behind the
FCDC, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's a really important initiative.
Yes, the FCDC is a non-profit that I started as a way to level the playing field for Black and brown skin people, mostly living in developing countries. What we try to do is that we provide free training, we provide scholarships, we provide mentorships, resources for them to upskill and to charge their worth. Not just freelancers, but even people who are trying to like go in-house. So we do that mostly with cohorts, teaching people skills from scratch, like tech SEO and other such things. And everything we do is reliant on, will I say, the SEO and content community, people donating courses, people donating tools, people donating resources that we then give back to our community as a way to help them upskill and then have the confidence to either move roles, charge more, and just make more money. Basically, that's our goal. Help our community members make more money with better skills and resources.
And there's so much talent out there, so I'm really glad to see that.
Yes,
that gets a little boost.
Yes,
it needs a bigger one, so I'm glad that we have a chance to talk about it.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Rebecca.
The topic for today, though, is actually content strategy. So we've collected a few questions from the audience members, and the first one that we really want to get into is about how you prepare a strategy. If you're creating blog posts, how far in advance is it worth preparing that type of a editorial strategy or planning?
Honestly, I don't want to use the word "it depends" because I feel like a leader is going to come for me every time I say it depends. So it's just different for everyone else. I have a client that plans their whole strategy in January or February for the whole year. By the end of March, they already know every piece of content that is going to go on the blog for the whole year. Some clients like to do it quarterly, some like to do it every 6 months, but I would say a great yardstick is quarterly, not just the strategy, but creating that content ahead. What is going to go next quarter, have that ready this quarter. So quarterly would be like a good yardstick in terms of how far in advance to create that blog strategy, because it gives you time to like get all the input from everyone who is involved in creating content, write the content, optimize it, do everything that needs to be done to get that strategy and the written content there, and then put it out there on your blog in the next quarter so that you have like this really nice tidy yardstick for not just publishing but measuring results.
Have you ever worked with companies who need to react to sort of things going on in the world?
Yes,
or in their industry?
I think about that all the time, and that's reactive content. You have maybe a day or two, max 1 week to create that content. You can create that content. You can react based on what is happening right now, like all of the new content coming out about is it Chat GP3 or GP3 Chat 3? I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but yes, there's a lot of content coming out around that, and that is reactive. You can always have that content, but the core of your content strategy is always going to be based on what are people searching for, and that's based on what keywords. So you can plan that out for as long as you want. You can plan that out even through seasonal content, make that space for it, and then you can also stay ready to create those reactive content if you have a couple of in-house content writers for you.
So do you build into your prepared content strategy the resources that you need?
No, I don't think so. I don't think you need to. Like I said, you like if you have a strategy, for example, saying we're posting 3 times a week, or we're posting once a week, or we're posting every day, when you have to create that reactive content, I think you just put that out in addition to what you already create, not removing one or making space for another. It's a thing of staying ready. One, it's a thing of, will I say, having the manpower to create that resource when you need to. And it's also a thing of saying, even when we have to create reactive content to respond to what is going on out there, it's coming in addition to what we already have. We're not going to say, okay, let's hold back on what we're already creating to make space for reactive content. All of them go out together, exist side by side.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. When you're creating reactive content, you mentioned responding to what people are actually searching for.
Yes.
So can you talk us through your thought process when it comes to content audits and gap analysis to find that type of topic?
Okay, so I always think in terms of clusters. Like, that's how my brain has always been wired that way. Even when topic clusters was not a thing, I am always thinking in terms of clustering. So that's the same way that I do the audit, because it makes it easier for me, especially when you're working on a large website. I can just pick a topic and then do that audit for that topic, then go to the next topic or big keyword and then do that audit for that keyword. It makes it easier. So that is the first thing I'm thinking of. How do I do this audit, or how do I find gaps? By thinking in terms of cluster. What is missing in this topic? What do we have? What is outdated? What needs to be combined? What needs to be deleted? And then take all of that, put in an Excel spreadsheet. Then before I start even doing the research. And then when I'm doing the research, what I'm mostly looking for, first thing I always start with is competitor research. And that competitor research is basically to find what we are missing, what we have with our competitors, and unique keywords. But unique keywords is not competitor research. It's more like doing that broad level keyword research. But I'm always going to take the easy way. And the easy way is make it into clusters, then do the competitor research, then do the broad research. That allows me to like determine what we already have, determine what we are doing better than our competitors, determine where our competitors are besting us, determine why they are better than us for this content that we have shared keywords with, determine what we don't have, what we need to create, how we need to create it.
So you're looking really at a strategic approach to what is there and what is missing.
Yes, because when you see what is there, then it's about performance. How are we performing for these keywords? If we're not performing well, why? Then what are competitors doing better? Because that's part of the gap analysis, understanding what they're doing better, not just for one or two keywords, but consistently. Why? How are they doing it better consistently? Because there's always a formula. I feel like there's always a formula. There's always a strategy for everything. And then reverse engineering that for us in a way that fits our brand style for success.
That sounds like I kind of want to ask this, but I think I'll save it for the end if we haven't had time. I wanted to ask you questions about, since you deal a lot with SaaS and tech companies, how do you deal with large keywords that have competitors that just flood content out there when you might not have enough resources?
That's a very good question, because I did something like this for a brand called Aurelius, and when I started working with them, most of their traffic was coming from paid ads, paid search, paid everything, and they were only ranking for like 7 keywords. I shit you not, 7 keywords in total, and they had big competitors like NN Group. So they had like really big competitors, and I'm always excited about those kind of challenges, because that means that anything that happens, I can take ownership for that results, because it's all me then. So what I did basically, always start with the keyword research. We identified the broad keyword that we want to start with. I think where people always miss the gap is trying to rank for everything. If you narrow it down to what that overarching keyword is, and then you say, this is the big goal that we want to start with, this is what is going to define us on a strategic level, what we want to be known for, then you find the traffic for that broad keyword. Usually it's huge, like maybe 10,000, 50,000, 100K monthly searches. And then you start to break it down. And then we identified like, let's say 30 keywords that we want to go for. Then we even break it down further. What are the priorities among these 30 keywords? Then we break it down to like the first 15 that are big, the ones that are bringing in money for competitors, the ones that are bringing in traffic for competitors, the ones that will allow us to build thought leadership around that topic. And then we start creating that content. But that content creation is just one step. And then we start thinking of how do we promote this content to the right people? How do we build backlinks? And I think that's the thing that we're most aggressive about, building backlinks and linking internally, but strategically to support the existing content that they had that was not doing anything on search because it was not optimized. And then the new content that we're creating. And within 6 months, they went from ranking for just 7 keywords to ranking for about, I think maybe 8,000 plus keywords. They tripled their traffic, and then they stopped relying on paid ads.
But
amazing. All of that happened because even though competitors are doing something right, there's always something you can do better. And something I realized is that most of these big websites, they get lazy because once they have that really amazing domain authority, it's now minimal effort. They can easily rank by creating content, even for the big cluster keywords. So because they're getting lazy, that means they are maybe creating a blog post with like 8,500 words. They're doing the least bare effort. We can go deeper than that. We can think about the type of graphics we want to create. You can think about video resources to support that content. He also had a podcast, so we could even turn those content pieces into topics that he was discussing on his podcast. So it was not just creating that content on the blog, but we're proposing it into different formats, and that meant that we were appearing everywhere, and that really helped us also on search.
So the multi-channel approach, and also sort of a topical authority sort of
you have to be
aggressive
approach. That's the only way. You have to be really aggressive when you're playing with big players. You have to have the budget to be creating the right content. That's so important, to create the right content, to do it consistently, to create the right assets to support that content, because that was another thing we're doing. Every time we created content, we always had an asset. It could be a template, it could be a calculator. They just had to be something that would ask yourself and say, what would support this content that would make it actionable for the reader, that would make it practical. So by adding that asset, it gave it more advantage than everyone else on SEP.
Okay. So take content beyond just a blog post.
Yes.
I know when there's a specific season or seasonal event, there's often an SEO campaign around that particular element.
Mm-hmm.
How do you update your pages to fit that event?
Okay, so because I mostly work in SaaS tech, we don't really have a lot of, let's say, seasonal events, maybe Black Friday, but I'm thinking the person who is asking this is asking about seasonal SEO and is looking at it maybe from a product standpoint. So I spoke to my friend Miracle Mente. She's the one who's an authority on this. So I'm just going to quote verbatim what Miracle said about this question. Now she says,
and everyone should definitely listen to this, because Miracle's advice on this sort of thing.
Yes. She says, so let's say you're talking about a seasonal period like Christmas. So you don't have to create new URLs. What you do is you create a category page for Christmas, and you add links for products people order most during Christmas under these categories. Users should have the ability to add items to carts directly from this category to make checkout easier. If you're using a CMS that doesn't let you do this, then you will need to create new links with Christmas in the tag and then put them in a new section. However, make sure you add a canonical tag pointing those links back to the permanent URL, which will always be on the original product section. Basically, you don't have to change 80% of your URLs. You can just create separate categories to optimize for seasonal trends.
That is excellent. Thank you.
Yes. So to paraphrase, what she's saying is you don't need to create new content. You just need to create category pages for those seasonal keywords, and then points your most popular product, links your most popular product on that category page, and make sure that there's a checkout button that makes it easy for people to take action directly from those pages.
So if you're doing content for a large company, what path should you take? Like, how would you streamline that process in a large company?
I think this is very vague. I really took time to look at this, and I still really did not understand this. What did they mean by what path should content take? I think content is the same, whether it's a large company, whether it's a small company. What large companies usually have advantage over is that they have a bigger budget. That means that you always find them creating maybe one blog post a day, whereas smaller companies will be creating let me say 2 blog posts a week. So that's usually the big thing. They have more budgets, which means that they can get more done, which means that they can own more. But I think it also becomes problematic at some point, because then you have all these content assets that now exist in silos, because it's just content that is everywhere. So the only way that I can think of to streamline it, you already know what I'm going to say, is to cluster. Make sure that everything exists in a cluster to prevent silos from happening. You don't ever want silos. If everything exists in a cluster, then it's easy to find what you own in terms of those big overarching keywords. It's easy to come back maybe annually and do an audit or do a gap analysis to find what is working, and then to fix what is not working, or to even update content. Because the bigger the company grows, the more content you're creating, the easier it is to lose sight of what is performing or not performing well.
So, yeah, I've seen that before, where the more content you have, the more complex that audit is. And then if you need to add something or correct something, it's an excessively large undertaking.
Yes. You don't even know where some of the content even is. You don't even know whether it exists or not. It's just all over the place. So clustering everything forces you to be organized and forces you to make sure that every piece of content you're creating is serving the purpose and is going to link to content that already exists.
This is actually a really interesting question that we have in the chat at the moment. So how do you deal with cannibalization? Because sometimes you see particularly older content that might be targeting terms where there is currently no search volume for really long tail keywords.
Can you repeat that?
How do you prevent cannibalization when you're creating like long tail keyword content?
How do you prevent cannibalization when you're creating content around long tail keywords?
Yes.
Again, I think if you cluster, when you do the original research, you can use a tool like what's this tool called? There's a tool that does this. It takes all of the keywords and then it clusters it for you so that you don't have to create duplicate content and you can avoid keyword cannibalization. For some weird reason, I've forgotten the name of the tool. It was created by Andy, I think Andy Chadwick and Sugar. Oh yeah, no, not Keyword Cupid. I don't know how come, but I've forgotten the name of the tool. It's not Cluster AI. It's not Cluster AI. I'm going to try and remember before we end today. Not Software SEO, not Keyword Tool.io.
If you think of it, let us know.
Yes, I will think of it. It does that. What it does is that it clusters it, and yes, it just makes it possible for you not to cannibalize yourself or to create duplicate content. So that would be the best way to avoid keyword cannibalization, because it's so easy to cannibalize keywords when you're clustering. You have so many similar keywords, so you want to make sure that you're not creating content for one keyword that is tied to intent for another keyword, and that often happens with clustering. So yes, you can do that with that tool, or I prefer the manual process of just plugging each of those keywords into Google SERP. After I've done the keyword research, plug them manually into Google SERP, and then make sure that the intent you think is right for that keyword is actually right based on the SERP result that is coming out. Because then you start to see that by the time you plug in the first one, second one, third one, they all bring out the same result. If they're all bringing out the same result, that tells you that they all have the same intent, and you don't need to create multiple content. You just need to create one piece of content, use the one that has the most search volume as the main keyword, and the rest of them are secondary keyword. Yes, keyword insights. Thank you, Taf. It's keyword insights. I was trying to remember. That's the name of the tool. Keyword insights. Great. Thank you.
So when you're clustering, take into account search intent so you don't duplicate content.
Yes. Search intents can help you avoid that cannibalization, because if they're all tied together, then you have just one piece of content and one big keyword covering all those other keywords.
So from an in-house point of view, how does collaboration between a content team and the SEO team work?
I've had this conversation with so many SEOs at events like Brighton SEO, Women in Tech SEO. It always come up. And I think the big issue always seems to be that people assume that that content and SEO should be two different teams. That is always the divisive issue. Should they be two different teams? Should they work together? I think that they should work together. I think they should be in one department, because tech SEO, I always say this, tech SEO doesn't have a job without content. You need something to work on. So you need to have the content team and the SEO team working together. That's always going to be the best workflow for me, in my opinion. When the both of them work together to create the strategy, you have the tech SEO team optimizing that content on the back end, also providing advice on what type of SEO strategy to use for creating that content. You tend to have issues when there is a divide between what the content team thinks they should be creating and what the SEO team thinks they should be creating. In fact, I've worked with a company where the SEO team and the content team were creating completely different content pieces on the same website because they couldn't work together. It was that bad. And from the outside, you wouldn't know. They just couldn't work together. It was always, it felt funny to me, but that's because they had disagreement on where they saw the future of their content for the website. So the SEO team said, no, this is what we need to be creating. The content team said, no, this is what we need to be creating. So the SEO team goes, okay, then we're going to create our own content. And then the content team goes, okay, yes, we're going to create our own content. And then they're both doing their own different thing on the blog. So in an ideal situation, you would have both content and SEO working together to harness that strategy and then to create one content for the blog, not having like different teams.
That sounds incredibly, not only inefficient, but also really expensive.
Oh, it was expensive. It is expensive, not worse, because that's still going on. But they can afford it. It's a massive, huge brand that brings in millions in revenue. They can afford it.
So when you're doing keyword research, do you have a favorite way to find in-demand keywords or topics that might not be, say, on Google Keyword Planner?
The only way I can think of is Google. Wait, what's this trend? Google Trend something. I know I wrote an article about it.
The Google Trends?
Yes, Google Trends. That's the best way. Google Trends. Yes, Google Trends. I just have to be sure. Yeah, that's it. That's the best way to find in-demand keywords and topics, because it will show you who is owning that topic right now. It will show you what people are searching for around that seasonal or in-demand keywords right now. In fact, it's the best way to create reactive content, in my opinion.
And what about podcasts? I know you mentioned podcasts earlier as a way of sort of omni-channel supporting content.
Yes.
What would you say are some of the best practices for podcast SEO?
I think it's the same thing. You have to look at podcast SEO as the same way you would look at your blog content. You have to think in terms of keywords, because you want to be creating podcasts around stuff that people are searching for. So I think the first thing to do is to make sure that you're adding transcriptions to, not to the podcast, obviously, but to a blog post. You take that podcast that you've created and then you post it on your blog, or you have a section for it, and then you post the transcription alongside it. Then you also have the show notes. What you want to do with the show notes is that you want to make sure that you're using entities for that keyword in the show notes. Then you want to create, will I say, like a brief, like a content brief, a content outline for your podcast. Same way you would create a content outline for your blog post. And then use the subheadings in that outline as questions when you're discussing your podcast, so that when you have the transcription, then it now pops up like a subheading that you can optimize as H2, H3, or H4. And then the entities are just going to look very natural when you're discussing them in the show notes. I would also say prioritize entities that you can mention naturally when talking. I think ClearScope really does this well, where they give you like, will I say, the most important entities to use. And then you can just think of how you can use that naturally in speech, so that even in the transcription, those entities are included in there. But I think even above all of this, the most important thing for podcast SEO, in my opinion, has to be distribution. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing for podcast SEO, sorry. Distribution. How can we get this in front of many people as possible? And I would say syndicating to as many audio sites as possible, and then make sure you're syndicating with Google. Make sure they're using all the right meta values so that it's findable, not just on search, but also on social media, because a lot of people are really, I'm not even searching for podcasts on Google. I'm actually searching for podcasts on places like Twitter and Instagram and the rest of them, because people will talk about what they like. So you want to encourage people to also use your podcast as conversations, like just go out there and then talk about it publicly as a way for it to get picked up. Will I say for social value? Let me use that word, for social value.
This is actually a question from the chat. Manu had a question about the role of AI when performing content audits. So not when generating content, but really
Sorry, repeat that.
When you are performing a content audit, do you ever use AI or automation as part of the process?
Yeah, I think because I'm usually performing my audits in very small measures, then I'm using SEO tools. I don't know if that qualifies as AI, but I'm using SEO tools to automate that process. You have the manual part you're doing, obviously, when you're looking through the blog, when you're looking through the website. But I don't know anyone who is not using a tool to do the audit, at least for the first part of generating that data, before you now start to manually look through it. So definitely, I don't know, Rebecca, does Oncrawl do normal content audits as part of a future?
As part of I have used Oncrawl to do content audits before, because using a crawler allows you to collect all sorts of information about a section of a website.
Yes. Screaming Frog is also another option. It's also a very good option. Yes, but personally, I also use SEMrush. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention that, but I also use SEMrush. Yeah, I also use SEMrush.
So whatever works. I guess the point is you need to collect that information. You don't want to do it manually.
You need to be using a tool, because you don't have 27 eyes. So you have 2 eyes. It's not going to be able to see everything. You need to be using a tool to crawl all of that information, for sure.
And I think we have time to squeeze in one last question. Roberto Leo had asked a question earlier, when creating things for seasonal SEO or even just creating new content. Does creating new links to existing content influence crawl stats by scanning the same products or the same pages more than once? So how do you manage sort of technical SEO internal linking structure of a website when creating new content?
Can you repeat that, but slowly, so I can process it in my head?
Let's see. Does creating new links to existing products or content influence crawl stats by presenting the same products or content more than once?
I honestly don't understand that question.
I think what he's really trying to ask is how does technical SEO website structure get
How does technical SEO website structure
get impacted by content, new content, and content clusters? So it's a question about internal linking.
I still don't understand the question.
Okay, sounds good.
I still don't understand the question. I'm confused.
Okay. Let me see if I can grab this and stick it over here just in case. But that's okay. I think we've reached otherwise the end of the questions. I think that was an extremely valuable session. We got some tools out of that. We got advice from Miracle. We talked about clustering, linking between clusters, updating content, podcast SEO. I think we've covered everything, Chima.
Oh, okay. I think okay. Creating new links to existing products. Okay. Does it influence cross stat by scanning the same products? I don't think I don't think you're going to have any issues, basically, because you're not creating new links. Like I said, you're creating a category page, and then you're adding links to existing content, not existing content, existing products on that category page for that seasonal SEO. So yeah, you're not creating new links. You're just adding links that already exist to that category page. I hope that makes sense. You're not creating new links. Like I said, I think that was the whole point of what Miracle is saying, that you don't have to create new links. You just have to point links that already exist, things that people buy most around that season, and then put it on that category page and make sure that there is an option to check out or add to carts rather. From there, it should be easy. So you're not creating new links. You're just adding what already exists on that category page.
Makes sense. Thank you, everyone who has participated, who has asked questions. And thank you, Chima, for the really in-depth and insightful answers that you've provided.
Yes.
As Anna has said, thanks for tuning in. We will send a replay out by the end of the week, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.